played Midge in Survival, the very last story of the original run. When I saw
one of the best.
One of the best, yes. And when I first saw it, I thought it was Mitch, which is my name, which confused me a little, but it's not. It's Mitch. So we're going to talk about the Sylve years, I believe, is the plan. How many microphones have we got? We're just going to have to play.
No, it's Mitch got one.
Have you got
Turn
one?
my phone off. My phone won't turn off.
Your phone won't turn off. Have we just got the two mics? We just got the two mics. All right, well, we'll have to sort of play handsy-wandsy with the mics then. So, let's start off. Andrew. Andrew looks younger than you'd expect, doesn't he? When you think about somebody who was script editing the show in 1987, you kind of expect him to look a bit more seasoned than that. Andrew, what age were you when you got that job?
Well, it is a time travel show.
Yeah,
so
I know.
You have to expect anomalies.
Yeah, but the fact is, I was 17 and now I'm older than you, so how did that happen?
It's kind of a TARDIS-based thing.
So how did you come about it? Because history records that the whole script editor of Doctor Who thing was going through a bit of a bumpy patch around that time because apparently, again, legend has it, Eric Say was the previous script editor and had a massive falling out with JT.
Well, I think was a brilliant guy, brilliant writer, but him and John really did have a major falling out.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to remember that it was those guys were doing was it 26 episodes a year? And we were doing 14, and that was a killer. So they were under such pressure. And also, I think they made the mistake of hanging out together and drinking together because they were buddies.
Right.
So if you're seeing somebody all the time and that kind of pressure cooker situation, the Doctor Who was sort of falling apart like a spaceship on re-entry because the BBC wanted to cancel it. Anyway, long and short of it, it was a pressure cooker situation, so it's not surprising that something blew up.
That's probably very well put, yeah, I suppose. I mean, because... I don't know. I mean, were you a fan before you got involved? Yes.
No, I was. Yeah. I mean, it was.
You take it and then we can share.
All right. Okay.
What
Yeah.
do you want me to do?
Yeah. You hold on to that one, Andrew. I'll pass this one between us.
I was definitely a fan of Doctor Who. Growing up, and it was my first TV job. I'm now answering questions you haven't asked, but it's I could do a song.
Kind.
Yeah. So I was really excited to be in this thing that I was a fan of. And used to hide behind the sofa.
As legend would have it. Yeah. So, I mean, Andrew, I've got to say, talk about playing the long game, but the master plan has kind of finally happened. I mean, the cartmel master plan, which is something which do we know what the cartmel master plan is referred to? It was a sort of a projected kind of what we discuss of retconning of a lot of this sort of the show's lore, which
it was just intended to be a kind of reboot to restore the mystery of the Doctor because Doctor Who is a question. The title of the show is a question, and the whole point about the Hartnell Doctor and all the subsequent Doctors is we weren't supposed to know who they were. But as the years rolled on, and I understand why this happens, when you're desperate to come up with a story, it's tempting to dig into the Doctor himself and to give him background. But I think it's fatal. And the trouble with what they're doing now, as I understand it, because I haven't seen the story, is that they're saying the Doctor's more than a doctor, but then they're being specific about it. I just wanted to say he's not just a Time Lord, and whatever else he is, let's leave it a mystery, because that was the whole... Because there was a time before the Doctor was a Time Lord, right? That wasn't the intention. The intention was that we didn't know who he was or where he was from. And then you get this whole accretion of detail, which I always think is like all the stuff that grows on the hull of a ship, and that means that it can't travel properly through the water. You go, like he's a Time Lord, he's not the big Time Lord, he's just... And each of those is sort of a small death blow to the mystery of the character.
I'm not really that comfortable with the whole timeless channel thing either. Fortunately, Russell T's coming back and he'll probably just forget all about it. much like he did with the half-human thing from the TV movie. I can't be bothered with all that. And it just didn't happen, But I think you're right, because, rather than injecting more mystery into the Doctor's background, it's just injected a hell of a lot more detail into the Doctor's background, which, I don't know, it's just... Anyway, but because it's weird, sort of the two things which kind of happened in like the interregnum, if you like, which were sort of have now sort of both come to pass in the show, which is one Gallifrey goes boom, and the Doctor turns out to be possibly the reincarnation of some ancient Gallifreyan figure preceding time, whatever it is. But they've both now been sort of absorbed into the mainstream of the show. Is this the kind of thing that were you this kind of fan? Were you the kind of fan who knows about things like this? Because there are many different levels of Doctor Who fan. You know, there really are.
No, I was. Yeah, what level was I? I was at the. Oh, sorry.
There you go.
I was at the intermediate level, really. I was like, I would sit there on a Saturday night and watch it, but I didn't know everything about it, and I was.
But you shouldn't have to know everything about it. I remember that
Okay.
we had the builders around. The builder was saying, and this was during the Moffat era, and he said, I saw Doctor Who last week and I couldn't make head nor tail of it. And the thing is, I think it's fine to have stories that are gratifying to the fans, but I think the stories also have to be capable of, if somebody hasn't seen the show in 10 years, that they can watch it and just enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, this, I think, because we're all fans here, but I think we all need to be sort of conscious of the fact that when the show starts catering too much to us is when it generally gets itself into trouble. And my, this is me sort of stepping out in, just me being sort of, my least favourite kind of fan wank, by which I mean the kind of wank fans come out with rather than kind of, overly, sort of pandering fan service, is when, because my main worry about the Timeless Child thing is this is all finally an attempt to explain the Morbius faces. I think that I get the feeling this is all that Chibnall was trying to do is finally explain that we all know what I mean by the Morbius faces, right? And
No.
okay. Oh boy. Okay, well here we go. In the brain of Morbius, the Doctor engages in a mind wrestling contest with a Time Lord super criminal called Morbius, which basically involves them plugging their heads into this kind of big wireframe apparatus and trying to drive each other back into each other's memories psychically. And so we start off on the screen with a picture of Tom Baker's head.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, and then as Morbius wins, right, he goes, "How far, Doctor? How long have you lived?" And we see on the screen Tom, and then we see John, and then we see Pat, and then we see William Hartnell, and then we see about 12 other guys who were all members of the production team, in various sort of Doctor-ish costumes. The obvious suggestion being that these are pre-Hartnell Doctors. And then literally about 3 stories later in The Deadly Assassin, they introduced the idea that Time Lords could only regenerate 12 times. Right? So suddenly, the Morbius faces become this real problem for continuity. Now, one of my least favourite things that fans do is try and find diegetic explanations for production glitches. When you see YouTube videos from some guy going, the reason that Ben Kenobi and Yoda do not mention Ahsoka Tano in Empire Strikes Back when discussing whether Luke is their final hope is that Ahsoka Tano never completed her Jedi training and as such was a... No, it's because she hadn't been thought up yet and wouldn't be for another 25 years by somebody other than George Lucas. So, please cut me off, I'm just on my...
Can I just say, apropos of nothing, haven't these two guys got the best voices ever? You just need to do them all day.
Thank you so much. But that's what worries me about the whole Timeless Child thing, is that the Morbius faces have been burning a hole in Chibnall's head since 1976, and he's like, finally, I will explain them. And it's like, no, they just changed their minds about how many lives a Time Lord could have. That's all that happened. So, anyway, let's bring Will back in, because, yes, Will,
hello.
Tell us how you got the job on Survival.
Ah, right,
Yes.
okay. Well, I was as I said, it's my first job, but I was also with a cooperative acting agent. These are ones that are run by actors in those days. My first agent at drama school. And in those days, you could kind of get in touch with directors bypassing the casting directors. You could write to the BBC.
I'm fairly sure that's how I got into Merlin.
Is that how, yeah?
Well, I was in Merlin for 8 seconds in the last season.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, the day after my episode went out was when they announced it was getting cancelled.
All right, brilliant.
So I think I killed it. But I think I was in that literally because that one's directed by Alice Troughton and she knew me from somewhere.
Right.
So I think literally just, let's get Mitch in. So, yeah.
Right, well, I had written to Alan Waring. It was through some thing about acting castings that you get through the post, and I think it was for Casualty, and I wrote to the BBC, and I met Alan for Was it this way round? I meant for a job anyway.
Can I just say that I thought Alan was the best director we had during my year on the show during the Sylvester year. He was brilliant.
Well, that's great. He's the only director I had. But and he was the best.
Did you work on Casualty with him as well?
I did, but not on this first one. The first one I didn't get, and then I, but he remembered me from the audition, and then I wrote about Doctor Who. And then he saw me, or he called me in. Maybe he just called me in. Or, no, this is it. Sorry, it's a long time ago. I know to you it's like yesterday, but it's 1989. Yeah, in the Cobb agency we had the breakdown, and I wrote for it, and he remembered me from this, and he saw me, and I went in, and I took the call saying I got the job, and I'd never done any television whatsoever.
Wow.
I'd only just come out of drama school a year or so before, and then on the Friday afternoon after the audition, I answered at City Actors, and they said, hello, and it was a secretary from the BBC, not a casting director like it is these days, going, hi, we'd just like to offer Will Barton the part as Midge in Doctor Who. And I was going to jump, hit the ceiling, because I was so excited, 3 episodes, and I just said, I'm sure he'll be very happy. And then I jumped around the office, and that's how I got the job.
It's a bit like Donald Trump used to pretend to be his own PA to spread stories about himself.
Really?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he used to pretend to be a guy called John Barron. Yeah. So, Andrew, what was the process, given that we've already said that Doctor Who's... I mean, Doctor Who, let's face it, was in a bit of turmoil, full stop, in '87. Because you're right that there was essentially... I mean, what, certainly came to light is that time when they postponed it in '85, they were actually going to cancel it, except it got leaked. And there was so much outcry about the fact that it was getting cancelled that they kind of dialed it down to postpone. But, what were you doing at the time, and how did you end up getting this job?
Okay, so I never wanted to be anything except a writer. And to me, being a writer was to be a novelist. And I thought, well, I might not become a successful novelist right away, so how am I going to support myself? And, writing for television, that'll be easy. So I didn't have a clue, because writing for television, breaking into TV writing is even more difficult. But I didn't know that. So in my innocence, I got a book by a chap called Malcolm Hulke, who was an old Doctor Who writer, called Writing for Television. So I wrote a bunch of TV scripts, cut a long story short, because he just checked his watch. That's always a good sign. So I didn't get a writing gig, but I did get an agent, and my agent knew John Nathan Turner. So there you go. That was pretty painless, wasn't it? Pretty painless.
That's fairly painless. Although, I don't know, anybody gets a feeling that's going, yes.
I forgot to say the scripts I wrote were really good.
No, actually the scripts, that's the thing, is I actually think that the scripts in the Silva era, particularly for the last 2 seasons, are actually the best that the show had had for quite some time. But I just get the feeling that it's kind of, that the show was, it kind of felt like it was on borrowed time a bit as a viewer. Did it feel like it was on borrowed time a bit from the inside as well?
No, we always felt short of time, short of money, and unloved. But I didn't think that we were imminently going to be cancelled.
Right.
But on the other hand, it wasn't a surprise when we were, because the show was really hated at the BBC.
No, they didn't do it any favours. We should probably throw this open to the floor, if that's okay. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, gentleman in the Matt Smith costume.
Thank you.
Yes.
You were talking about the Timeless Child before, and I was just curious. If you were forced to retcon, to write the retcon for the Timeless Child, what would you write?
The question was, if you had to retcon out the Timeless Child thing, how would you go about it?
Well, I don't know, you could just come out of the shower and it's all a dream.
Yeah. I think the Master was lying. I think the Master was lying, and maybe there is something weird going on with the Doctor's memories, but I think the Master was lying, and I think the fugitive Doctor is from an alternate timeline. That's how I would do it, because I really like Joe, I really like the fugitive Doctor, I really like the fact that it felt like a calculated cue to the toxic fanboys, and at a time when Star Wars were kissing their toxic fanboys' ass, let's face it, Doctor Who was actually flipping the finger to the toxic fanboys. Yeah, it's another alternate Doctor, still a girl, and this one's black. It was great, I loved it. But that's what I would do. Now, Will, how would you try and write us out of the Timeless Child? Do you know what the Timeless Child thing is?
No.
Okay. I wouldn't worry about it.
Don't put me on the spot here.
Yeah, well, basically, the Timeless Child was an idea that was introduced in the last couple of seasons, but the Doctor is actually not who he/she thinks he/she is.
Right.
Is actually an incredibly ancient being who was adopted by the Gallifreyans, who they stole regenerative power from because they couldn't regenerate until they found this mysterious alien being, and has actually existed for thousands of years longer than he/she remembers, and there are whole dozens of incarnations who we've never seen.
Well, now you mention it, makes complete sense.
Yeah. So did season 3 of Broadchurch. Yes. Dr. Song. Yes.
Thank you. Not
Yeah.
the question I was going to ask. I was actually going to ask about Rivers of London, but
Yeah.
when's your podcast coming out?
When's that?
This needs to be a podcast.
This needs to, apparently this needs to be a podcast.
But I'm
I'm
clueless
up
as
for
to
it.
what's been...
Yeah, anytime, guys.
Okay, well,
Yeah, love it.
Okay.
But, sorry, was there a Rivers of London question?
It was just like sort of how fantastic.
You're enjoying this, is that what you're saying? You're enjoying the banter?
I was actually going to ask about.
God, I wasn't sure it was going very well, so I'm very pleased, thank you.
That's just because you got a difficult question. That was a very unfair question. I'm going to say, or for anybody. A chap with the orange. Oh, okay, that was your question. So, carry on.
I was just going to ask, like, how would you have written the Rivers song, like, ideas in the 10th through Matt Smith to Capaldi era?
I always thought it's very dangerous giving the Doctor close relations because it makes him too mundane and too human. I mean, it's what Terence Dicks used to call no snogging in the TARDIS. Because he felt that if you'd start to tie the Doctor down in relationships, you'd just make him too normal. So that I would tend to steer clear of all that, personally.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought it was a bit, an odd thing to bring into the new series, but I thought the River Song thing, but I mean, let's face it, Stephen Moffat, has he written the adaptation of this new, I think it's Hulu's Time Traveler's Wife? Yeah.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen it yet, but it's about time he bloody owned up to adapting the Time Traveler's Wife, because he did it twice in Doctor Who. Did he not?
If
I mean, Girl in the Fireplace is Time Traveler's Wife, and so is the whole River Song.
The musical.
No, not the musical's different.
Yeah, my friend's playing the lead in that, Joanna Woodward.
Oh,
Go and see
there
it.
you
She's
go.
fucking brilliant. She's amazing.
Sorry, I don't. Massive fan of the Time Traveler's Wife book.
Yeah.
They did do a fairly decent adaptation
I
of
saw
her.
it.
Yeah.
The Hulu series, ouch, ouch, ouch.
I've not seen,
Don't-
okay.
If you like the book, save yourself.
Approach the Time Traveler's Wife TV show with caution, says Dr. Song.
But go and see the musical with Joanna Woodward, because she's amazing.
Yes.
Hello. If Andrew Cartmel was to take over as showrunner, what direction would he take the show in?
Did we all get that? What direction would Andrew take the show in if he was made showrunner right now? Andrew.
Can I swear?
We all have been, so fuck it, go ahead.
Well, number one, get rid of the fucking sonic screwdriver. That's
My son loved the Sonic Screwdriver.
Sonic glasses instead. Bring them back.
And then I would just dispense with all this myth that's. I would have to do a walk out of the shower thing because they've done all this stuff to encumber the Doctor with history, and the Doctor should be above history and out of history. The other thing that has always got my goat is when you see the TARDIS flying, because the TARDIS is never on its way somewhere. It's either here or there,
Yes.
and it's never in between. So these are the things that bug me. You ask.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
This really fucked me off.
You just want
Why
to
did
swear.
the Daleks suddenly fly? All right, I understand. It's evolution. They've evolved. Okay, I've answered my question. I get it. I get
It happened in Remembrance, it happened in Remembrance in 88,
Yeah.
which is exactly what we're talking about.
Did it?
Yes.
They flew.
If we're going to get angry,
Oh,
the
God.
Daleks came up the stairs in Remembrance.
Yes, they did, yes.
Forget that I asked
And then they
that.
did it again.
I'm sorry, I apologise. Yeah, they're allowed to fly.
It wasn't really flying, it was floating.
Yeah, it's just got
Oh, was it floating?
It
Okay.
was like a glorified stair.
Okay, we're allowed that. We're allowed that.
Another question.
Well, let's get another question on the floor. Anybody? Yes.
Did you ever meet Adele Silver, who was playing your sister in Survival?
Yes, she was in Emmerdale, wasn't she? Oh, sorry, yeah. She was in Emmerdale, wasn't she? And she played the bad man's got us, bad man's got us. She had that little... Well, she was great, yeah. She was... and then she grew up. And she became in Emmerdale. And very beautiful, and I met her. Yes, I met her. It must have been at one of the conventions once. Lovely. What's your memory of her?
I don't know. Did you actually meet her? Because
Yeah.
she's playing your sister, but you don't you're actually in the same
Yeah, I met
scene
her when
together.
she grew up. Yeah,
Yeah.
years later. Yeah. I don't know what she's up to now. Do you know what she's up to now?
Yeah. Hollyoaks, I think.
Probably.
Probably. Anybody else? Any more for any more? Yeah, right at the back there.
Yeah, showing wearing my fanboy my sleeve here. How far into production did the actual story of Lung Barrow get before it became Ghost Lights?
Yeah, everybody hear that? How far did they get with Long Barrow before it became Ghostlight?
Well, it was nowhere near production. It was in pre-script stage. We were just talking about storylines, so there wasn't even a script yet. It was just a discussion and some small documents. But it was a brilliant story, but it was just too complex and not dramatic enough in the sense of swift moving action. So we kind of recast it in the form of Ghostlight, which I still think is one of the greatest Doctor Who. People still ask me what it's about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I ran a competition on Twitter to see who could summarise it. I see it's entirely doable, I would maintain. But yeah, so I love Lung Barrow, but it was a kind of a Mervyn Peake, Gorman-Gast sort of feel to it. It wasn't a conventional TV drama.
Speaking of which, Gorman-Gast, I just want to say, what was the beef with Perivale? Because I only found out when I moved to London in the mid-90s, like about knocking off for 10 years after the Ace era, that Perivale's an actual place. It's the first turn-off on the A40 after the Hanger Lane gyratory, right? And I remember thinking, wow, Perivale actually exists. But Doctor Who spent 3 years talking about it like it was Gorman-Gast or something, like it's this sort of hideous hive of just sort of evil and abuse. And I was thinking, did you ever get any kickback from Perivale?
Well, Ian Briggs, who was the first guy to write Ace, and effectively he created her as we see her on the screen. He was given a character who he brought to life, and he based that character on some real-life teenage girls who were, like he had an acting group,
right? And
one of them was, I believe, from Perivale. And if you've ever met a teenage girl, they don't like where they're from.
That's true.
So that was sort of enshrined in the show for that reason. But I quite like. Yeah, Perivale gets a real old kicking, but
really does.
Doesn't perhaps deserve it. But if anybody looks back on their childhood and wanting to leave home and go somewhere more interesting, that's what that's about.
Yeah, I just wondered if you got any complaints of Perivale. I, for example, can never go back to London now, but that's another story. Do we have any more for any more? I think we've got time for maybe one more. Okay, let's try and get these last two. You first, sir.
Hi. I remember it well that the cancellation back in the late 80s. Before the cancellation came, there was a lot of rumour that you actually might take over the showrunner position yourself. The showrunner, well, not showrunner, but in charge of it.
I would have loved that, but because we didn't know it was going to be cancelled, there's never been any proper discussion. I'd love to think that might have happened, but it was certainly not a done deal, and there was no guarantee that because although script editors did get promoted to producers, there was certainly no guarantee that would have happened. But if I had been made producer, I would have probably hired somebody like Ben Aronovich as my script editor.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a good lad.
Yeah.
I've done many joint signings with Ben Aronovich. His cues are so much bigger than mine. Speaking of which, have you brought anything to sign? Are we doing signatures after this? I don't know.
I'd like to bring something. Oh God.
I've got copies of my books. If anybody wants any of them, I've written 3 science fiction books, the Terror trilogy. So I believe I have some with me. If anybody wants those. So I think we might be doing a bit of this, and also I'm doing the cabaret later on as well. After about 8 p.m. And we got.
I'm sure we can find stuff to sign, or if you just want to come say hello, that's fine too.
That's good too. We got one last question to the hand that went up over there, and then I think we've got to knock it on the head. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Not very much of a question. I was just wondering, what was it like working with Anthony Ainley in Survival?
That question was, what was it like working with Anthony Ainley? And I guess it goes to both of you. Start with Will.
Right. Yeah. Well, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I don't remember. I've mentioned these things before. He's obsessed with cricket, wasn't he? So he said, "Come and sit in my car," and I'm going to my Boris stuff, like Boris, but come on, he didn't say it like that. No, he said, "Come and sit in my car, listen to the cricket." So I'd sit in the car, listen to the cricket. He told me about some shenanigans he got up to in the States with a particular female Doctor Who fan who wanted him to be the Master. Along with us, and which he did. He obligingly did, apparently. And he was really supportive and fun. He lost his temper at one point, not with us, but on behalf of everyone, because it was so hot in Lulworth Cove, and I thought he was brilliant in the role as well. Really, really good.
Andrew, Anthony Ainley?
I can't top that one.
Well, you can't top the Master. You can try, bottom from the top.
I don't know where that matter condensate has been. There is a rumour about Anthony Ainley that I'm going to ask you about in a minute, but I'm asking now.
I wasn't involved in it, I can tell you now.
Anybody who listens to wheezing groaning sound knows exactly what I'm talking about. All right, I think we have probably better knock this on the head. Why do we better knock this on the head? Yes, and then thumbs up for the organiser. Folks, big round of applause, please, for Will and Andrew. I'll see you guys later.
So many different things in Doctor Who, I'm not even going to try and sum them up, so please welcome them to the stage. Who's a fan of K9, by the way? Because I know that's a really divided, it's just that that's been on the stage, so it's, yeah, an interesting mix there. Right, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful
Nice
model.
dog.
I love that one. Oh, of course, yeah, the Sarah Jane Adventures. Oh, well, we'll get on to that. So, right, I want to get this out of the way first of all, Gary, because, of course, a lot of people know that before you went into kind of